Fox News recently hosted a town hall for Bernie Sanders, and one of the questions that was asked of him had to do with the opioid crisis. Now, somehow Fox News managed to redirect this question into a, well, how are you going to pay for it? Kind of a question. Not sure how that happened, but take a look.
We have another audience question. Amy is a therapist from South Whitehall Township. Amy, what's your question?
There she is.
Hi, I work as a therapist specifically with people struggling with opioid addiction. Pennsylvania is currently 4th in the nation for opioid overdose deaths, which amounts to 15 people a day in Pennsylvania. As president, what specific policies would you implement in order to address this crisis?
Thank you. And thank you for the work you're doing. And let me say, it's not just Pennsylvania. It's Vermont. It's New Hampshire. It is a terrible, terrible crisis. For the first thing that I would do is make certain that we never allow Trump to implement his plan, which would throw 32 million people off of the health insurance that they have. Some of you remember, and think about what that would do to dealing with opioids. You may remember that during the campaign, you correct me if I'm wrong, you guys follow this stuff, President Donald Trump campaigned, and he said, I'm a different type of Republican. You remember that? He said, I'm not going to cut Medicaid. I'm not going to cut Medicare. Well, the last budget that he brought forth called for $1.5 trillion cut in Medicaid over a 10-year period, $845 billion in Medicare. What would $1.5 trillion cut to Medicaid do for our ability to combat the opioid addiction? So what we need, in fact, is we need a series of ideas to deal with this very, very serious addiction. You know, we are facing a nation right now where our life expectancy is actually going down. And one of the reasons is drug addiction, it is alcoholism, it is suicide, which the doctors refer to as diseases of despair. When people are giving up on life, that's what happens. So what we need to do is to make sure that we have the treatment capabilities, which most states don't have. Actually, Vermont's doing fairly well in that. That means if you want to get off of that addiction, there is a place for you to go. It's difficult, it's tough stuff, but we have to deal with addiction in a serious way and invest in treatment for those who are addicted.
For all of these plans, you say there are enough taxes to raise to pay for all of the plans.
Yes.
There are bipartisan independent groups who have looked at those plans and say it just doesn't add up. Well, what do you say to them? We
disagree. And sometimes these plans done by think tanks, check out who funds the think tanks. Yes. Okay. Look, Brett, here is the issue that we have to deal with. Let me just bring it down to a human level. We're the wealthiest country in the history of the world. That's where we are right now. Do you think we should be having the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major nation on earth? We got some moms here who are spending $15,000, $20,000 a year trying to find quality child care for their kids. We probably have a child care system which is more dysfunctional than almost any other country on earth, when we all know that 0 through 4 are the most important years. You got hundreds of thousands of bright young people in America today, the wealthiest country in the world. They can't afford to go to college. And you got 40 million people struggling with student debt. You really think that we cannot do better as a nation? And on top of that, you got a handful of people who own more wealth than the bottom half of the American society. Now, I understand that we're taking on corporate America, we're taking on the Republicans, we're taking on the Democratic establishment, taking on the drug companies, taking on the insurance companies, taking on the military-industrial complex. You know what? Okay? It ain't easy. I know that. But I think what the American people know, the American people, I think, are ready to deal with justice in America. That's what we're fighting for. And that's economic justice, social justice, environmental justice, racial justice. Okay?
We want to get to...
That was an amazing answer to the question. Like, so the question was really broad and completely unrelated to the opioid crisis question, but I'll get to that in a second. The question was very broad. Like, how do you generally want to pay for these programs? And his answer was flawless. Flawless. The idea that, like, we are the richest nation in the world and we have all of these problems. And he laid down so many different issues. It was very well diverse, and he addressed every concern that Americans have. He even mentioned the Democratic establishment, which not a lot of progressives talk about them because it really distances yourself from other Democrats. And it slightly separates the party into two different segments, the Democratic establishment and the Democrats that are not within the establishment. And so I was incredibly impressed that he provided such a well-diverse answer. Now, let me get into the framing of the question. What the heck does this have to do with the opioid crisis? What the heck does that have? What did that have anything to do with the opioid crisis? The question had everything to do with the opioid crisis. Like, how are you going to address the opioid crisis? And then, like, he gives all these answers by saying, like, well, like, look at Trump. Trump is cutting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. And those are the things that, well, Medicare at least, and Medicaid, they fund programs that help people with opioids and opioid addiction. And on top of that, it's when you cut off their insurance that they end up going to the street to get fentanyl. And they end up overdosing because they don't know what they're getting, because they can't afford opioids. They don't have the prescription anymore. That's how people overdose, is they get fentanyl off the streets because they get cut off from their doctor because they lose their health insurance. And so what you do is you blame Trump and you say, listen, Trump wants to throw you off of Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid, and how are you going to, where are you going to go? You're going to go to the streets. And then on top of that, he talked about life expectancy. If life expectancy is going down because of suicides, because of overdoses, alcohol addiction, that was a brilliant answer, in part because consider who the audience of Fox News is. The audience of Fox News is like 90-year-old old white men. That's obviously an exaggeration, but not really. The point is, though, that they're on Medicare. Medicare, Social Security. They care about their life expectancy. So, like, Bernie Sanders was able to talk to those people personally and say, listen, Donald Trump wants to cut your stuff. He literally proposed a budget that will cut all of your benefits, or at least a good chunk of them. Where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? How are you going to solve this opioid thing, this problem that you have? That was a brilliant move. That was a very, very brilliant move. And then Fox News was like, well, how are you going to pay for it? Like, Bernie Sanders was talking about how he opposed that Trump was cutting all of these programs. He didn't even propose a program. He didn't propose anything. He just talked about how he doesn't like the idea that Trump is cutting all these programs, that instead we need to invest in smart methods. He didn't actually give a policy position on this. And then all of a sudden, Fox News is like, yeah, well, how are you going to pay for it? I feel like it's part of their DNA. Like, they have to. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? Right? Like, sorry, that was kind of aggressive, but that's Fox News. That's Fox News. Like, they have to ask Bernie Sanders that. And I swear, I challenge you guys to watch this. I'm pretty certain they've asked this at least 4 times now. How are you going to pay for it? And, like, Bernie Sanders keeps giving the same answer. Dude, we just want social justice. We're the richest nation in the world. I just don't want 3 people making more than the bottom 50%. Like, that's all. There's no how are you going to pay for it. It's just a matter of redistribution of wealth that makes it a little bit more fair, a little bit healthier. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it, Bernie Sanders? How are you going to pay for it? I swear, I think there needs to be a compilation video. If someone can do this and send this to me, that'd be great. I'd love it. A compilation video of Fox News asking Bernie Sanders, how are you going to pay for it? I guarantee you the video would be at least 5 minutes long. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? But how are you going to pay for it? Jeez, man. But Bernie Sanders' answer there, honestly, out of all of the answers that he gave to that question throughout the entire town hall with Fox News, that was the best. Hands down the best. He brought up childcare. He brought up free college. He brought up the student debt crisis. He brought up social welfare, economic welfare, environmental justice. He brought up racial justice. I mean, like, it was such a diverse answer. And the audience was just getting into it. You can hear this guy like, yeah, yeah, like 5 times. Yeah, yeah. And Brett Barr is just like sitting there just like, but Bernie, how are you going to pay for it, Bernie? Wow.